Hi everyone, good evening and a very warm welcome to Thorough Newspaper Analysis. This is the video for the 2nd of July 2024. Now let's quickly proceed and have a look at the pointers of discussion for the day. So first of all, for discussion, we'll be having the editorial segment, and here we've taken up an Indian Express article. Now, the title of this article is Should Education Be Brought Back to the State List? This is going to be followed by the second segment of news updates. And lastly, we talk about legal news where we just have one news to cover. So with that in mind, let's proceed and let's have a look at the heading of this title, of this article. So it is, should education be brought back to the state list? See here, essentially, we'll talk about whether education be brought back to the state list under the 7th schedule of the Indian Constitution. And this is in light of the entire debacle, the controversy around NEET and other government competitive exams, where we've seen major lapses over the years and particularly this year. So let's have a look at the context. See, recently, we all know that NEET UG exam, it has been embroiled in controversies over the award of grace marks, then the allocation, then there are severe, allegations, and even FIRs have been lodged in Bihar and a couple of other states, alleging that there have been paper leaks and other irregularities in the exam. The government also cancelled the UGC NET exam after it was held, while the CSIR NET and the NEET PG exams, they've been postponed. So this particular situation, whatever has unfolded in the recent past, it reflects upon the very sad state of affairs that our education and the conduct of these government exams, where several aspirants work day in and day out, and they prepare for these exams, and then when they sit for the exams, these are the sort of lapses that they have to go through. So now, in light of this, let's talk about what is the historical background. See, please understand this, that by virtue of the Government of India Act of 1935, during the British rule, this particular law, it created a federal structure for the very first time in our polity. Now, when I said federal structure, what do I mean by that? So here, see, there was a division of the powers. So the legislative subjects, they were distributed between the federal legislature, which is currently called the union, and provinces. Provinces currently are the states. So the legislative, those subjects or the items on which laws could be made, these subjects were divided for the first time under this particular act, and they were distributed between the federal legislature, which is akin to the union government or the parliament currently, and provinces, which is akin to the present day state legislative assemblies and councils. Now, education, which is an important public good, it was kept under the provincial list, which is to say that it was a part of the state list. After independence, however, this continued and education was part of a state list under the distribution of powers. But then came a change. And this was during the emergency, the Congress party, it constituted a committee by the name of Swan Singh Committee. This was to provide recommendations for amendment to the Indian Constitution. Now, one of the recommendations of this committee, it was to place the item or the subject of education in the concurrent list, and this is to evolve all India policies on the subject. Whenever any item is on the concurrent list, here both the union, that is to say the parliament, and the state legislative assemblies and the state legislature, they get power to make laws. So this was implemented through the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act, which was in the year 1976, by shifting education from the state list to the concurrent list. There was no detailed rationale as to why this change was needed and why this switch was proposed, and the amendment was ratified by various states without adequate debate as well. The Janata Party government, which was led by Morarji Desai, that came to the power after the emergency, passed the 44th Constitutional Amendment Act of 1978 to reverse many of the controversial changes that were made by the 42nd Amendment Act, which we all know is often termed as the mini constitution. Now, one of these amendments that was passed in the Lok Sabha but not in the Rajya Sabha was to bring back education to the state list. Now, that we've looked at the position that we currently have in India and that we had in India, the historical background. Now let's talk about what are some of the international practices that are followed. So as far as US is concerned, state and local governments set the overall educational standards, mandate standardized tests, and supervise colleges and universities. The Federal Education Department's functions primarily include policies for financial aid, focusing on key educational issues, and ensuring equal access. In Canada, education is completely managed by the provinces. Now, if we come to Europe and talk about Germany, the constitution vests legislative powers for education with the Landers, which is equivalent to states. In South Africa, on the other hand, education is governed by two national departments for school and higher education. The provinces of the country, they have their own education departments for implementing policies of the national departments and for dealing with local issues. Now let's talk about what can be the way forward. See, the arguments in favor of education in the concurrent list, it include a uniform education policy, improvement in standards and synergy between the center and the states. However, considering the vast diversity of the country, a one size fits all, this approach, it is neither feasible nor desirable. Further, as per the report on analysis of budgeted expenditure on education, this report was prepared back in 2022 by the Ministry of Education. Out of the total revenue expenditure by education departments in our country, estimated at rupees 6.25 lakh crores, 15% it is spent by the center, while 85% it is spent by the states. Now, even if expenditure by all other departments on education and training they are considered, the share it works out to be 24% and 76% respectively. The arguments against restoring education to state list, it include corruption coupled with lack of professionalism. Now, we've seen recently that there have been issues and in fact severe and often very saddening surroundings that we saw in the NEET and the NTA. They've however displayed that centralization does not necessarily mean that these issues would vanish. Considering the need for autonomy in view of the lion's share of expenditure being borne by the state, there needs to be a productive discussion towards moving education back to the state list. Now, this would enable them to frame tailor-made policies for syllabus, for testing and admissions for higher education, including professional courses like medicine, engineering, and even our course like law. Regulatory mechanisms for higher education can continue to be governed by central institutions like the National Medical Commission, the UGC, which is the University Grants Commission, and All India Council for Technical Education. This is the concerned body for engineering and other technical education. So this was sort of an opinion piece, and you may fetch some of these pointers or you may take home some of these pointers, make note of these to propose suggestions and solutions when you, let's say, write any essay on this topic, if at all it features in your exam. Now, with that in mind, let's proceed to the national news category, and this is the first update here. Indian High Commission launched One Tree for Mother campaign in Bangladesh. Saber Hussain Chaudhary is Bangladesh's Minister of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, and Pranay Verma is India's High Commissioner to Bangladesh. They've kicked off the campaign, which is called Tree for Mother. This is for planting a sapling at Chancery provinces in Dhaka together. The High Commissioner mentioned that this particular campaign launched. It was inspired by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who initiated the Ek Ped Maa Ke Naam campaign on World Environment Day 2024 in New Delhi. Next up is another important update. We covered an editorial as well on the subject yesterday. 3 criminal laws come into force. So the 3 new criminal laws called the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita 2023, the Bharatiya Nagrik Suraksha Sanhita 2024, and the Bharatiya Sakshya Adhiniyam 2023, they have finally come into force with effect from 1st of July. These laws, they aim to create a more accessible, a more supportive and efficient system of justice delivery for everyone. New criminal laws allow online incident reporting, then FIR filing at any police station, and victims receiving a free copy of the FIR. Although this provision was already a part of the CRPC, section 154, clause 2, I believe. And then police and investigators are trained accordingly. The new criminal laws, they prioritize timely investigations of offenses against women and children. They mandate forensic visits to crime scenes for serious cases and allow electronic summons for streamlined legal procedures. FSIB, we'll talk about its full form later. It appoints Challa Sreenivasalu Setty as SBI's 27th chairman, replaces Dinesh Khara. The Financial Services Institutions Bureau, which is the FSIB, it has appointed Challa Sreenivasalu Setty as, who is one of the managing directors of the State Bank of India, as its next chairman. He started as a probationary officer or a PO at SBI in the year 1988 with a bachelor's degree in agriculture and certification from Indian Institute of Bankers. Over the past 30 years, he gained experience in corporate credit, retail, digital, and international banking, including in developed countries. Let's talk about this institution itself. So FSIB, it is an autonomous body which is responsible for making recommendations for appointing senior executives to public sector financial institutions. FSIB, led by Bhanu Pratap Sharma, it comprises members like the Financial Services Secretary, Secretary of the Department of Public Enterprises, then a Deputy Governor of the RBI. Now let's talk about the important days for the day, and the important day for today is GST Day 2024, celebrating India's unified tax system. Please mark 1st of July here for the concerned date. So GST date is celebrated every year on 1st of July. The implementation of GST, it is eliminated multiple indirect taxes which are levied by the central and the state governments. GST Day in India, it marks the introduction of the GST regime, which streamlined taxation, unified the market, and facilitated smoother interstate trade. Let's talk about the history of it. So the GST concept in India, it was introduced in the early 2000s to simplify the complex tax structure and to boost economic growth as proposed by the Kelkar Task Force. You may make a note of this. Let's talk about the theme for this year's celebration. So it matches the government of India's main priorities. These include boosting economic growth, then embracing digital change, and making the GST work well with the country's tax system. Now, this has brought us to the international news segment for the day, and this is the first update here. First is with respect to the Global Liveability Index 2024. So the Economist Intelligence Unit, the EIU, it released its most recent Global Livability Index, which once again names Vienna in Austria as the best place to live in the entire world. Vienna leads the Global Livability Index, and it is followed by Copenhagen, then we have Zurich. Melbourne, it fell to the 4th place, while we have Calgary and Geneva, they share the 5th position. Osaka and Auckland, they also rank very highly. As far as the lower and the bottom rank places are concerned, we have Damascus, Syria, they still are at the bottom of the list. Apart from that, there are a couple of other African countries as well, like we have Libya, Algeria, then we have Nigeria. These are also in the bottom of the ranking. Bangladesh Navy signs contract for Made in India 800 tons ocean-going tug with India's GRSE. Bangladesh Navy, it signed a contract for Made in India 800 tons ocean-going tug with India's Garden Reach Shipbuilding and Engineering, which is also called the GRSE. This contract for the ocean-going tug further, it strengthens the maritime cooperation between India and Bangladesh. Let's talk about the GRSE. So it's a government undertaking under the Indian Ministry of Defense. It will be responsible for building this tug. Next up is this update, Japan to launch new banknotes. Japan will introduce new banknotes from 3rd of July. And this is, a unique sort of a development. Why? Because it features cutting-edge holography that creates 3D rotating portraits of historic figures, a world-first innovation. The new banknotes in Japan, they will help visually impaired people by using 3D technology for discerning and for identifying banknote values through touch, along with tactile marks for identification, which becomes easier with the help of this advancement. Japan claims to be the first country to utilize holography that creates a 3D rotating effect on the portraits, significantly elevating the note security features. Now, this has brought us to the legal update segment, and here we have this update. The name of this particular case is Kunal Kamra versus Union of India. So the central government, in pleas challenging the 2023 IT amendment rules, told the Bombay High Court that not preventing fake or false news, it would violate fundamental right of the recipient of such news to know correct information and not be misled, which flows also from Article 19(1)(a) of the Indian Constitution. Solicitor General Tushar Mehta, he argued in this matter that right to know and the right to not be misled, these are crucial as part of right to freedom of speech and expression under Article 19(1)(a). He suggested that achieving the objectives of the disputed rules, the IT rules, we're talking about IT rules. So the disputed rules through Section 69(a) of the IT Act, which blocks public access to information, it could be excessive and disproportionate, and therefore clarified that if the FCU labels content as fake, this is the body which is responsible for labeling content as hateful or false or fake, then intermediaries can dispute it in court. He emphasized that government's role, it is to flag content, leaving decision to act on it to the intermediaries. By intermediaries, we mean the platforms where information is provided online for access of the general public. He argued that false information affecting the government should be treated differently due to its potential impact on public order. Let's talk about background of this update. So the Supreme Court recently halted the union's establishment of the fact check unit under the IT amendment rules of 2023 until the Bombay High Court resolves the challenge to the amendment. The Supreme Court set aside the March 11 order of the Bombay High Court, refusing to stay the implementation of the rules, and the consequential order allowing the center to notify the FCU. The name I would like to reiterate is Kunal Kamra versus Union of India. So this has brought us to an end of our DNA. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day ahead.